You're listening to the Around the Lens podcast, the home of high-quality, roundtable, visual journalism discussion about the news, topics, and gear related to our career field. Now, here's the host of our show, David J. Murphy.
Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 206. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Joining me this week for the first time ever in person is my co-host, Ron Hamilton. Hello, Ron.
Aloha, Dave. Good to be here.
Glad to have you, buddy. You been doing all right?
Yes, sir. Here in Hawaii, we always do all right, as you've seen these past couple of days.
Yeah, indeed. Ron has been a very excellent host. He picked me up from the airport. He is letting me use his vehicle. I mean, it's just amazing.
It's not a vehicle I'd want to drive myself anyway, so it's not that big of a sacrifice.
I mean, the brakes may give out at any moment, and it's just, my wife and family just in there, but
turn
no big deal.
Turn uphill and use the e-brake, you should be fine, Dave.
There you go.
Downshift.
Drift. I'll just drift.
There you go.
Anyways, so happy to have Ron here and be in the same room with him for the first time, and of course he's going to pay the favor and come out to South Korea at some point, right, Ron?
Yeah, it's on my bucket list.
It's on your list of things to do. Okay, great. Well, we've got a great show for you despite everything going on with the live stream or anything like that. So before we get into it and introduce our guest for this week, I just remind everybody to go to our Patreon page, aroundthelens.com/ or patreon.com/aroundthelens. Go over there and throw us a buck and get everything we do ahead of time. We got a lot of great stuff coming up in the year 2020, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But anyways, exciting new year, a lot of things going on. But let's get into our guest this week, and I want to introduce him is Jeffrey McWhorther. Jeffrey, tell the audience about yourself.
Yes, hi. I am a Dallas-based photojournalist. I am a father of 5 children, happily married for almost 10 years. And the bulk of my work is actually the main bread and butter of what pays the bills is more kind of marketing and communications type stuff for schools, universities, etc. A lot of high school sports, things like that. Some corporate clients, but really my passion has always been documentary photojournalism, and so usually concurrently with that better paying work, I am working on a long-term documentary project. The thing that I would say has probably gained the most attention has been a 2-year-long documentary project I did about some Central American high school soccer players at the high school in my neighborhood that I worked on from 2017 to 2019.
Oh, wow.
So that's about it.
Awesome. Great. Well, it's interesting. You mentioned the fact that, you said like documentary photography, it's tough to make a living doing that, which is why you have the marketing work, you have the other things like that, and that's almost an important thing to address in this day and age. It's because like you almost have to have the main income being something that makes money, so you can do the more passion projects. And I think probably maybe in the era of print or film, you could have gotten away with, or even early digital, you could have gotten away with being a full-time documentary photographer perhaps, but now it just seems very untenable for except a few. But I mean, glad to know that you're still pushing for that, and that's sort of more like your passion project stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did fail to mention I do also still regularly freelance for the Associated Press. I shoot a lot of sports for the AP here in Dallas and for the Dallas Morning News. But even that is not really necessarily what keeps the family finances going.
Right.
So
no, of course,
it's still something I do because I love it.
Yeah, I've known single, childless photojournalists struggle to make a living doing the job full time. So a man with 5 children, I'm sure you want them to go to college, and unless you're planning to bring them up in the world of photojournalism, so they can work, on essentially the farm and create content. But that's a few years off.
Maybe, yeah.
But that's great. That's great. Well, glad to have you on. Got a lot of great things to talk about, and this is a new year, 2020. So before let's talk a little bit about what 2019 was for us and what 2020 will be for us in the future. So, I make resolutions every year to do a couple things, and with regard to photojournalism or filmmaking or documentary photography or visual journalism, I start a photo a day project every year, and usually it dies around March, but I try. I do it to push me to push photo more. But what usually happens is by probably about mid-January, late January, I'm photographing my cat, or I'm photographing the roof, or I'm photographing just something in my general vicinity before I go to bed. And I only got 2 kids, so 5 kids. I mean, that's, whew. But
they give you a lot to photograph.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, you got built-in subjects all the time.
That's
so beyond that, though, I mean, I've never really made more ambitious. I think any sort of resolutions for me personally have been to, push the channel a little bit more. So I do have some ideas and some initiatives that I'll be hoping to exploit this year for Around the Lens, and in terms of pushing out new content and expanding its capabilities. But beyond that, I don't have too many other life goals that I can necessarily plan for with regard to my craft, just because of my work and my life and whatnot. But Jeff, what about you? I mean, do you have any sort of resolutions or anything like you want to achieve in 2020, or that with regard to visual journalism or whatnot, or photography?
Yeah, I would say my resolutions usually are more summer resolutions rather than New Year resolutions.
Okay.
Because of a lot of my work is for schools. Around late May to June, things really slow down a lot, and that's the time when I start reevaluating my life. And I've gotten better over the years, but that used to be accompanied by maybe a lot of anxiety about where am I going with my life and what am I doing and all that. But anyway, I spent actually a couple days this past summer kind of considering where I'm going. The 2019 was really kind of I would say a watershed year in my career as a photographer. I graduated from college from the University of Texas at Austin in 2009 with a photojournalism degree, or a journalism degree. But actually the first 2 years out of college, I didn't work as a photojournalist. And from 2009 to 2019 was quite a lot happened in there, I would say. Obviously had 4 children, another one coming, but also it was in 2011 that I really jumped in full time to freelance photojournalism, and I really have struggled for quite a while to find the best way to continue that type of long form documentary work, and then the project I mentioned earlier, it's called The Time We Have Here, about the young, the high school immigrant soccer players. That was, I guess, a real coming together of a lot of things. And really, honestly, an answer to prayer, to have a project like that to work on and to see it. It was published in the Dallas Morning News and a major online interactive, and in the print newspaper, which nobody reads anymore. But to me, it was a big deal. And just seeing kind of some of those things come together, and some of those longtime hopes and dreams come to fruition was really cool. And to have it be a story that was local in my neighborhood with kids that I knew and cared about made it even more special. So I would say this past summer, that story in some ways was kind of winding down, and it was a time to look forward to maybe what's next. And so I have been working on the next project right now, but I think one thing I'm focused on right now is not being anxious about pushing things too quickly, especially in long-term documentary photojournalism. It's important to me that you let the story lead the way and not force anything. And especially in this story I'm working on, it's developing as it comes, and I'm trying to kind of stick with it and just move slowly and not feel pressure. That is one thing I work on my documentary work. It's basically completely self-funded and self-motivated, self-assigned. I'm not working on assignment or commission for anybody, which is unfortunate in the fact that there's no money involved, but it's good in the fact that I can kind of go at my pace or go at the pace of the story. So that's kind of where I am right now. I think the other thing, again, you'll hear me talk about this a lot, but my family life is really important to me, and we're also really involved at our church and honoring my wife and my family and my church community, and not I've met a lot of photojournalists who will kind of sadly say that they've sacrificed their family life for their work, and I never want that to be my story. So letting my wife call me out when when that needs to happen, and putting them first. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my family is number one, and I'm working on a 18-year-long documentary photo project with my children, 2 separate 18-year-long projects. So I can definitely feel you there. And of course, I'm sure your family is overabundance with the dad photographer all the time. Probably to the point where they're like, "Dad, quit taking a picture."
Yeah, they're pretty used to it by now. I try to not force any smiles or anything. So
right, no, absolutely. Just you being around, taking their already. Yes. My 5-year-old is starting to get a little fed up with me pointing the camera in his face. He's now starting to realize what a camera is and the pictures and stuff like that. And well, on the one hand he's sick of it. On the other hand, he actually knows he can. When I want him to pose and smile, he's more cooperative. He understands what's going on versus, most of the time when he's just staring off into space or doesn't pay attention to me. But, Ron, what about you, bud? What do you got going on this year? What's new for 2020 for Ron Hamilton, in either, the broadcast or visual journalism world?
Dave, I'm focusing this year purely on Around the Lens. Made it my resolution to actually physically be with you every time we do the show here. So I will necessitate a move to Korea, and I hope you don't mind that I move into your spare room.
That's fine. That's perfectly fine. We'll put you to work. Sure. I mean, you cranking out the content. You'll be my content farm.
Why not? Yeah.
For Around the Lens. It's not a sweatshop. We do turn the AC on for you.
Just open a window. That's all I ask.
Actually, we've got 2 spare storage rooms just outside the front door of our house.
Perfectly acceptable.
You can go in there. One is one is very hot. The other is very cold. So you can just
switch between the 2 of them, and I'll be set.
Yeah, you'll be fine. And we'll let you in every once in a while to use the bathroom and shower. That's fine. And as long as you keep on cranking out that content. So.
Showers are optional, Dave, as you well know.
Well, there's a river, so I mean, you can go down by the river.
Speaking of photo-a-day projects, you poop out around March, I poop around January 2nd.
Oh, okay. That's, hey, at least you're honest with yourself, But, I mean, with regard to things you do for, like, your studio or, for for your
professionally
network.
Working, I try to do my best at all times. I hope that they're happy with me, and I hope they keep me around for another year. That's all I can say.
Well, I can say just from hanging out with you yesterday, I know you're going to be devoting more time to doing teleprompter work.
That's right, Dave. I got another teleprompter.
That's right. You got a little phone-based teleprompter to do your little stand-ups and stuff like that.
I heartily endorse the Parrot teleprompter. For all you kids out there that want to make your own teleprompter.
No, hashtag not sponsored.
Yeah, not sponsored.
But we'll happily take a sponsorship from Parrot if you're listening, which they're not. But if they were.
Before we had an actual physical teleprompter, we used to use glass from an 8x10 photo frame. And you can angle it, and you can reflect off of that. And it works pretty good.
Yeah.
But buying a real one is a step up in the world.
It's funny you mentioned that because teleprompting and also just doing more scripted work is something I'm going to be focusing on with regard to Around the Lens and some of the other stuff. It goes to what I mentioned before, because I did buy a portable teleprompter myself, which I have currently set up in my studio back in Korea. But my intent with that was to create more scripted, looking at the camera or explanatory stuff. One of the kind of projects I wanted to start is sort of a back to basics or core fundamental techniques series that deals with different visual journalism topics. So, basic stuff like file management, lighting, moment, how to work for a wire service. These are all things that I think, I've heard from some of the audience members who are vocal and actually communicate with us that this is something that they desire. So, I think a sort of specific educational series would, be something people would want and would hopefully garner some attention. So that's one of the things I'll be working on.
No, we could probably all work on that. All the hosts or people that do this, we can even have contributed stuff from people like Jeff that want to share knowledge with our audience as well. Little 5-minute segment, something like that.
Yeah, Jeff, maybe I'll reach out to you and figure out how'd you get to be part of the AP.
Right,
or
something
how
like
you become
that.
a freelancer for a wire, because that's something
People want to know. Yeah, people want to know.
But yeah, beyond that though, looking back on the year, was it a good year for you?
2019 was great, Dave.
Yeah.
I'm happy every day I wake up. You know, at my age, Dave, every day is like the 4th of July.
Is that because of the drugs?
It might be the fireworks,
in your head.
In my head, that's true.
I think 2019 was a good year for me. With the move and everything, there's a lot of great content to photograph and film, and a lot of exciting things happening. So, and for the show, I think it was a good year. We saw some very interesting new guests on, and I think we tried out a couple new things that worked. And if you've seen the show recently, we've done some more stuff with experimenting with live streaming and what the capabilities that can offer. So I'm excited for what we were able to achieve in 2019 with the show, and I'm looking forward to what we can do in 2020. Jeff, you mentioned your summer is kind of like your thing, and I think you already talked. You said you had a pretty successful 2019 with what you were doing with your personal projects and stuff like that. So that's great. Is there anything else you'd like to add about the year behind or the year ahead?
I'm guessing. I think maybe the way you found me was because of tornado photos. Is that true?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. So that happened. That was an event, I guess. I'll talk about that now. That was a really interesting occurrence. So I live in Northwest Dallas, and there was a EF3 tornado that went about maybe 12 miles, just cut a path right across North Dallas, which is the area I've lived in my entire life. And it's been an interesting thing because it destroyed a lot of things, but it was a very narrow path. So a lot of people in Dallas were pretty unaffected, but for us, it didn't get our house. It missed our house by about 150 yards, but it went right over our church building and right over these two schools that are right next to our church. And one of those schools, Thomas Jefferson High School, was the school that I referenced earlier, where I did the documentary project about the soccer players. So it was kind of this very strange, serendipitous event where a lot of the places where we spend most of our time were severely affected by this tornado. And it was interesting because literally, as soon as it happened, within 30 minutes, I drove over there to the church, and, the roof was ripped off, and I was making pictures. But it really, these are like my friends. The picture that sort of, I guess you could say, went viral. It was on the Time magazine Instagram, was just one of my fellow pastors and one of the maintenance guys, people that I know. But all of a sudden, my personal life was in the news, which was kind of a weird deal. And then also it was strange seeing the sort of coming together of this tornado story with, the Thomas Jefferson High School story. And it was real interesting. I guess for me, one thing it did was validate the value of community-based photojournalism, because as I continued to sort of tell the story of Thomas Jefferson High School and how it was dealing with the tornado and stuff, I already had all these contacts, and the trust was already there because of this previous project I had done. So that was kind of an unexpected turn at the end of my 2019 was that tornado and everything it brought, both like in our personal lives, church and everything, but then also in my professional life, documenting that whole thing as a professional photojournalist.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You mentioned that your personal life was kind of thrust into the forefront there, but I mean, how has your imagery making, blowing up and being so widely viewed affected you in your career? I mean, has it affected?
Not really that.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, I think
it hasn't led to any sort of.
Cool.
It hasn't opened doors, so to speak, to any sort of larger projects.
It's opened a door to be on a world-renowned podcast.
There you go.
Thank you. Yes, of course. Tell me what that one is after the show. I want to know that podcast you mentioned. Maybe
we'll subscribe. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, cool. Yeah, definitely some very powerful imagery there, and sad that it happened, but obviously, glad that your connections and whatnot. It kind of almost like a perfect storm. Excuse the joke. But
it was right.
Yeah. So okay, great. Well, how are they doing? How's everyone coping? As far as you can tell.
Pretty good. Yeah, it's kind of the holidays came and everything sort of calmed down for a little while, and I think it's just right now we're in that the long road ahead phase, of rebuilding, and the pictures of people hugging and crying and twisted metal and all that are pretty long gone, and now I do plan to continue documenting the story. My photographs of our church are more just kind of for the church, but I think for the school, I'm still involved with the soccer team and know the principal, and it's going to be, I'm not sure from a visual perspective what that story is going to be like, but I hope to capture it as much as possible as they kind of try to rebuild and reestablish back there on that corner where they were.
No, yeah, absolutely. I was going to follow up with that. So good. Yeah, glad to hear it's got. Look forward to seeing how that story evolves over time. So there you go. You got another long-term story to cover in 2020.
You can always cover the hail in Dallas too. That's an easy one.
Yeah, we never have gotten our car beat up, but my sister has, and yeah, it's pretty. I forget that that's not normal in other places.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next topic this day. We're talking about the Canon 1DX Mark III that just got its specs leaked not too long ago. So I was looking at this and I was thinking like, okay, man, this thing is going to be a beast. It's going to be insane. And, for in certain aspects I think it is, but in other aspects I'm like, why would anyone buy this camera? In a world with mirrorless cameras, and I wish we could have had Travis on tonight to kind of, just basically destroy this camera with his Sony pitch, but essentially what we have here is a mirror camera, a traditional DSLR mirror-based camera, and it's the sequel to the 1DX Mark II, and it has it's a big chunky, double body, full-size body. The traditional cameras you have a 20.1 megapixel sensor, ISO up to 819,200. I think is neat here. 5.4K internal RAW recording, 4K 60p RAW. No idea if there's a crop to this, but knowing Canon and their just lack of insight into what using their cameras for video, I wouldn't be surprised. Let's see, live view AF down to -6 EV. Here's something you can shoot 1,000 RAWs. Or 1,000 or more RAW plus JPEGs. So if you want to shoot some sports and just hold down the shutter the entire time, you can do that for the entire game pretty much, and you can record the whole thing, 30 frames a second or whatever. You shoot your own video there. But let's see, the launch price will be $6,500. Wow, that's an update I'm just learning now from this. So. Okay, well, let's start with this. What do you shoot with primarily there, Jeff? What's your camera of choice?
So, I use two bodies. One is I have a Nikon shooter, so Nikon D5 and a D4S. And I do actually shoot video, quite a good bit of video in my kind of more paid work.
Yeah.
So I do use those features too.
You use the same cameras for your video?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I love the D4S. I used it for... I was deployed to Honduras for 3 months, and I used that as my video camera and my still camera, and it was a wonderful device to use, and output some very wonderful imagery. Only 1080p, but that's fine.
Right.
Still high quality video. And Jeff, or actually, I'm sorry, Ron, what's your camera? I can't remember. What do you use?
I was a Canon shooter, Dave, but I've given it all away to my students in the Philippines. So now I'm a cell phone shooter for the time being, Dave.
But you are going to go mirrorless, right?
I'm going to go, yeah, that's the point. That's why I gave it all away. I'm going mirrorless, and I've decided on the Fuji X-T3. I'm going to go with that system.
Oh, I'm sorry for your loss.
Well, Hannah is the one that convinced me. Hannah Kozak, our former
really?
guest. Yeah,
okay.
She convinced me. We talked about it, and she sold me on it, so that's my story.
I can convince you to go Panasonic, huh?
No, I'm not going to go Micro Four Thirds.
Well, APS-C,
APS-C's bad enough. Yeah, I don't want to do crop.
Why not go full frame, bud?
Well... Maybe we'll talk about it after the show.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I mean, they got the Canon R series. If you want to go stay with Canon.
I'm not happy with what Canon did. I'm not happy with what Nikon did. I was gonna go Sony, but for the cost, I really think that the X-T3 will do me just as well.
Yeah.
I think it'll be just fine for what I do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, mirrorless is the way to go, honestly. And to see Canon come out with a mirrored camera, I was thinking, okay, maybe they're doing something amazing with this thing, but I don't know, for the price and for what you get for it. I mean, I would, if you're a video shooter, I would go with the Panasonic S1H. You're getting that 5.9K video recording capability.
Awesome camera.
Yeah, absolutely. I've used one in my personal work, and I mean, it's got the flippy screen, the rotating screen. This is it looks like it's going to be the standard no movement screen. I mean, the screen is stuck to the back of the camera. You can't do anything with it, and which is a thing that's I get it, for the bigger cameras and for the more professional stuff, you don't want the moving parts, right? But, in this day and age, almost all cameras have some sort of capability to move. Even the ones that have flip up or out, this doesn't have any of that. So I don't know who who would buy this camera or what this camera is for. Let me throw it over to you, Jeff. Because you use very similar style cameras with Nikon, because the D4S and whatnot, they're more of the traditional. Everything stuck together. Hard working. It can take a beating. That's what I love about those cameras. They can take a beating, but. Obviously not as a Canon shooter, but what do you think of this camera, its specs, and kind of how it compares to what Nikon is doing? And, from your own personal perspective, looking at the sort of camera space, have you considered upgrading or switching to mirrorless or any other camera body in your professional life?
I guess my thought on it is, first of all, mirrorless, I'm probably not as informed as I should be. I'm pretty old school.
Well, thank you for being here, Jeff. You can show yourself out. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm pretty old school, and I'm also kind of cheap, so I don't buy new things very often unless I feel that I really need them.
Right.
And I haven't felt that way yet. When Nikon came out with that, I forget what they called it, the Z whatever, their mirrorless camera. Yeah. I looked at it pretty hard just to see, what is this all about? Is this something I should be going towards? And I didn't feel like I needed to at this point. I don't want to be stuck in the past. So if I feel that someday I need to, I will. But I think, you go to a major sporting event, you don't see a ton of mirrorless cameras out there on the sidelines. You still see these type of things. And I think a lot of people aren't quite ready to fully buy in. Especially one thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, again, like I said, being a cheap, frugal person, is when the Nikon came out with their mirrorless. All the Nikon reps were saying it's not a replacement of the mirror, of the DSLR system. It's in addition to. And I'm like, okay, of course it is. I got to buy all these too. But I don't know. This camera looks like a beast. Those kind of super high ISO stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly, I still on my D5. I don't usually go any higher than 12,800. Shooting high school football and stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe it's again I was shooting in the early digital cameras, and you still have that sort of ingrained in your mind. You don't want to push the ISO too high because it makes the picture look bad.
Yeah.
The video.
Although I'd have to say, at a 20 megapixel sensor, though, you could probably boost that thing way the heck up, and you're going to get really high quality imagery, even at super low levels.
Yeah. Yeah, the video is interesting. That's I don't know. That's something, like I said, not as informed as I should be. What does that mean? Recording raw video?
It just means that essentially you have more latitude, like when you shoot raw photos, right? You have more latitude with regard to image and color correction. It's the same basic thing with raw video. You just have more, you can bring out more, if you shoot a little overexposed or underexposed or whatever, you have more ability to pull those colors out. If you shoot on raw, you can also have more ability to kind of do HDR and whatnot. Right.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I'd be interested in seeing what that's all about. I definitely need that, or wish that I had it sometimes when I'm shooting video.
In 5.4K, obviously it's an odd form factor, but it does give you that flexibility to kind of crop in a little bit if you're producing to a 4K output, or even way more if you're producing to 1080p. Yeah, I find this camera to be interesting, but I think not something I would actually invest in. But I think you make a great point about sports shooting, because I think that's something. Excuse me, even with the advent of mirrorless, and I'm sure Travis would say like, oh, you see more and more Sony cameras at sporting events, and you can shoot XYZ blackout, 20 frames per second with the A9, and I know it's a great camera, but I think you're really especially with sports shooters, you're going to see those Nikons and those Canon DSLR bodies out there covering Olympics and covering different sporting events for probably the next decade or so to come, just because it's something like that, such an important event. And something where these guys they know it works, right? I can't see them potentially taking a chance on a mirrorless body, even one that is established and whatnot, like Sony's stuff, at such a vital sports event. When you have hey, my Canon DSLR has worked for me for the last decade or two. It gets the job done. All I'm looking for out of this is stills. I'm not looking to do video. And I'm, this is what I want. So, I can see definitely if you're a Canon sports shooter, this might be something that would be appealing to you, and you would definitely consider investing in for your work. And I mean, it doesn't say how many frames per second it shoots, but I have to imagine it's probably a lot. Again, with 1,000 RAWs, you can get away with shooting the entire event.
Well, it does look very rugged. This would be probably a good thing to take to the desert or something like that, and do your
war.
Real photojournalism with.
Yeah, indeed.
Also, just one other thing about the mirrorless that I'm not a huge fan of is like when I look through the viewfinder, I like to actually see the real thing, not a digital representation of what it is.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's going to always be around, but whatever, we'll see.
Yeah, no, I mean, and if you were talking about mirrorless cameras maybe 5 or 3 years ago even, I would agree with you that the electronic viewfinder is just crap in most cases. But with this new crop of camera bodies, and even honestly the GH5 that I have, but more so with the new crop, I mean, you can't tell. Like, it is 1-to-1.
Oh, really?
You're looking at 120 frame per second viewfinder that's showing you not only the image, but also a ton of additional overlay information that you can't get out of a traditional DSLR. And it's just, once you get used to it, it's tough to go back. Honestly.
Well, and also you see the actual exposure too. It's not just with the regular mirrored camera, you see what you see, but you don't see what the camera sees. With the
I feel like that would distract me, but maybe not. Like, because sometimes if you got to just shoot it, even if you're way off, and then try to fix it later, because if you raise the camera and all you see is darkness, then you can't see anything,
Right.
I don't know, but I need to use one more. I'm not against them. I just need to use them and see how it feels.
Yeah, I mean, get yourself either a cheap one or maybe go to a store and check it out. I know there's a few Best Buys in Texas that have really well done camera sections where you can test out like all the major stuff, and it's really impressive what they have there. So I would definitely give it a shot. See if it's for you. I will say it does take a little getting used to. Going from DSLR took me honestly, I was very put off by the EVF when I first got the GH4, and I was a Canon shooter traditionally. I used the 5D Mark II as my main body of choice, and even when I had the GH4. I was kind of like relegating it to B cam or secondary cam. I still continue to use the 5D because I loved being able to see what I saw, and I saw that as the traditional, like, okay, if I really want photos, I'm going to go with that. But then when I went to the GH5, I was like, you know what? I've gotten used to the EVF. I can abandon traditional DSLRs now, and I sold all my kit and was like, okay, mirrorless for life. So yeah, I'll never probably go back to a DSLR body, and I'm really surprised if we see new DSLRs in the next decade or so. I'd say by 2030 we'll be they'll be as popular and as common as film cameras. But we'll see.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
But let's go ahead and move on to our last topic this evening. We're talking about the top 10 stories from Petapixel. Now, if you've listened to the show, I pull a lot of the content that we talk about on this show from Petapixel. It's just a convenient source to go to. It's one of the top sites in the world that deals with photo news, so it's just out there. I know some people don't like it. I would say our co-host Zach Roberts is not a big fan of Petapixel, not only for its sort of vitriolic and I would say toxic comment section that exists on most stories, but for the fact that, as far as I know, and I'm only speaking from outsider experience, they're not paying for the articles and content. But I mean, that's not necessarily a ding against them. I mean, they have a 6 million unique viewers a month or whatever, and if you want your stuff seen, Petapixel is a great way to get it seen. So I know we deride the exposure economy here on this show pretty much every week, but I'll say for myself, I've used the platform to help promote Around the Lens. I've used the platform to promote myself. And, if it means giving an article or giving my content to them to use it, then so be it. I'm willing to make that sacrifice. But, obviously, if you do this professionally, if you create content for the web professionally, I can see the animosity that you would drive from that, and kind of what they're doing and the fact that, hey, they're making money from this advertising. Why aren't they passing along to their contributors? But it's a give or take. No one's forcing anyone to contribute to this website. They can all contribute to AroundTheLens.com, and I'd be happy to host anyone's content on there for the low price of free. But I'm in the same boat. But anyways, this article has caught my attention because it's the top 10 articles that appeared on the Petapixel website, and so just interesting to see kind of what made the top 10. Let's start over you, Ron, first. Any of these, come out and kind of, like, either
well, we can talk
you?
about the Prime Day one. That one, I remember when the Prime Day snafu.
Yes.
And I missed it. I tried to get in.
We all missed it, Ron.
Well, there's a wonderful website that I use, and you should all know about, and it's called slickdeals.net. Again, not sponsored, but slickdeals.net. I get all my deals off of there.
Oh, I love slickdeals.net.
And it popped up. 9448, whatever it was, for a certain lens.
Yeah.
And then somebody says, hey guys, not only that lens, but everything in cameras is 9448 today. So I got on, I tried to order, but my order was canceled, or it said out of stock or something like that. Yeah, I missed it, yeah.
One guy apparently got lucky.
Well, they got like a bunch of these $13,000, like 5 of these $13,000 lenses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they got the lens. I think they probably canceled that, but I know that they got a bunch of like camera bodies and lenses. So at least one guy got their order fulfilled because they showed it online.
Right.
And no one lies online, so I'm sure.
Well, that's possible. You're right.
But if somebody did actually get a $13,000 lens for $94.48,
who was it? Adorama screwed up with.
Did they?
70 to 200 f2.8, something like that. Or it was 85 1.4, I think it was, and it was like $250. It's supposed to be a $550 lens. And I ordered one of those. I said, "Oh, I'll get a Sony A9 then. That'll be my move."
Yeah.
And they canceled it right out. So I always miss those deals. Yeah, I never get in on those.
They usually figure that stuff out quick and cancel it. Right. So I wouldn't be surprised if most of these orders were canceled. So don't feel too bad, Ron.
Yeah, okay, I'll get over it.
Yeah. Cry yourself to sleep. Jeff, any of these stories stuck out to you?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. The two that stood out to me the most were the 40 tips to take better photos, and the last one, the quotes. And I'm always real skeptical of those like tips to take better photos, but I clicked on it. I actually liked a lot of them.
Oh, okay.
And what stood out to me was, especially sort of in the context of the conversation we just left, was that most of them have nothing to do with equipment, and actually
sure,
a lot of the quotes and the tips are like encouraging people to put less stock in, equipment and more focused on sort of the heart and mind behind photography. And that's what I'm definitely an advocate of that, and anytime I have the opportunity to talk about photography, especially to young or aspiring photographers, I basically focus zero on equipment and focus everything on the way you think about it and, the way you approach it from like a heart level perspective. So, probably my favorite quote from there was from Yusuf Karsh, which says, "Look and think before opening the shutter. The heart and mind are the true lens of the camera." And just, especially as like a documentary photographer, that's what it's all about. Is being whenever people talk about the ubiquity of digital images, and is photojournalism going to go the way of the dinosaur and all that? I always come back to that, like, yeah, everybody has a nice camera, everybody has a phone, citizen journalism, whatever, but like there's always a separation between those who have this approach, that really approach stories and subjects with like a thoughtful mind and a compassionate heart, and also the dedication to really follow through with a story, and not just to like get a picture that goes viral or whatever. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about equipment and whatnot, and I fully agree with you more so than ever, because I've definitely felt, I continue to feel the pressure of gear acquisition syndrome, because I pay attention to all the new cameras that are coming out as per is required for my podcast here and whatnot. And the most recent release of new Panasonic cameras, the mirrorless full frame cameras, it was really hard for me to not want to push the buy now button on Amazon, especially with the S1H, because that's a wonderful camera, and thankfully I get to use all that equipment for free, essentially, for my job, so I don't have to. I get the same sense of buying it without having to pay for it, and I get to use it whenever I want. But I would say, though, personally, I have resisted the urge to get new gear and have focused more on the craft, like you said, because it doesn't matter what equipment you have, really. I could still be doing the same thing I could be doing now with the 5D Mark II and still be getting excellent results. And I think if I hadn't moved more towards video in my career in the last 5 years, I think I would still be using that camera, because it produces wonderful results, and it's a full frame camera, and I had all the nice L series glass and everything like that. So I was fully happy with it. But again, I saw the move towards 4K, and I wanted to take advantage of that. And so I upgraded with a purpose then, and then I upgraded the GH5 because it was such a, it had some more capabilities I wanted. And if the GH6 is announced, maybe it'll be announced at the CES that's going on right now. I would love for that to happen, because I would love to upgrade to a GH6 and whatever that might bring. But if if they do announce it and it offers new capabilities or whatnot, like 8K or 4K 120 or something, I'll definitely be interested to upgrade. But yeah, I wouldn't upgrade just for the sake of upgrading, unless it's going to give me some sort of capability, And I agree, it's not about the equipment; it's about what you do with your eye. And honestly, I've been so enamored by cell phones that I could probably do 90% of what I do with a cell phone. I wouldn't have to bring around the camera and the lens and everything like that. But I push myself to bring that clunky stuff around and try and elevate my craft in that regard. But yeah, it's not about the equipment at all. And I would say for you, if you're getting by with 1080p and that's what your clients are happy with, then you're fine. I don't know, have any of your clients ever said, like, I want it in 4K, or do they not care? Excuse me.
No, the clients have never said that. I do. I want it in 4K. So, so the D5, which I shoot, that's my primary body, shoots 4K. And
okay, great.
When I really feel that I need 2 4K cameras, I'll rent a second D5.
Okay, so you do shoot in 4K.
Yeah, with that.
Okay, great. Yeah, I wasn't sure of the video capabilities of the D5. I knew the D4S only shot in 1080p, so... Is there a crop factor really, on that, or is it full frame?
Yeah, there is. There is a crop factor. But, especially for documentary photography, like you said, you could still be using your 5D Mark II. Yeah. A lot of the times I'm like, I could still be using my D200, the first digital camera I ever had. Sure. If you're outdoors and the sun is shining, you can basically use any camera.
Yeah, just don't take that thing above like ISO 200 and you'll be fine.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, obviously in the dark, it does, like, of course, equipment makes a difference, especially if you're shooting sports. You got to have like the nice equipment for the most part. But yeah, I mean, with documentary photojournalism, it's really all about just being present, being there in the moment and yeah, just putting yourself in the right position at the right time and having the shutter open, Yeah. And, yes, I mean, I'm thinking of all the pictures in my most recent documentary project, and I mean, so many of them are it's just a photograph. It's a rectangle with people in it. And there's nothing really technically complicated about it, but what makes it a good picture is the story that it tells,
Yeah, 100%. And, if the camera isn't going to give you any new specific capability, it's not really worth buying. And I think I've realized that more and more, especially with having children, because I got to be more careful about what I spend my money on. I'm not a single dude who can just buy every new piece of gear that comes out, and I have to be a little bit more mindful of that. But, unless you're going to get some sort of capability out of it. If you are, great, take advantage of it, get that new equipment,
right.
or wait till it goes
right.
used, if you can hold off. Because that's another thing. I buy everything new, but I've actually been moving a lot more towards used equipment. I almost buy everything used now, especially accessories and like lenses and stuff. I don't buy any of that new if I can help it. The camera body I'll usually buy new because that's something I'm going to keep for a good 5-6 years or something, maybe longer. So I want to make sure that's going to do the distance. But lenses, those things are rock solid.
You can also Adorama has open box deals. So you're getting a brand new camera. It just happens to be an open box that was used for a display or something, a demo unit or something like that. So you're still getting a pretty good, brand new deal for $100 off, $200 off, whatever.
That's right, Adorama. We'd be happy to sponsor you.
Yeah, Adorama.
You can sponsor us.
Call, please.
One of the stories that stuck out to me was the number 9, which is the photographer who died protecting his film at the 1980 Mount St. Helens eruption. And at first I was like, he died protecting his film. Why didn't he get out of there? But he knew he was going to die, apparently, according to this story. And, was like, I don't even know, like, if I'd be thinking about this, but he had the wherewithal to essentially use his body to protect his camera, to protect, these images of the eruption. And that's why we have these stunning, once in a lifetime, not seen anywhere photos of the actual eruption, because he did protect it with his body. I'd have to say, though, if this were nowadays, your digital camera would probably still be burned, destroyed, melted.
Yep.
Your memory card would be gone if you try to protect it with your body. So, but it's a riveting story here, and definitely sad for him. But thankful that we have these imagery, and that's again, this is what stuck out at me when I looked at the list the first time, and what I could recall from it, just from memory. So definitely a sad story, but it is what it is. Would you protect your camera body, Ron? With
I remember the Mount St. Helens eruption. I was in high school, and I guess junior high. But the point is that
what year?
I would have got the heck out of there. 1980.
Oh,
I would have got the
heck
heck out.
Born, Ron?
Maybe we shouldn't talk about that right now. Yeah, I would have got the heck out. I would not be sitting around taking pictures saying I'm going to get the great eruption shots.
Well, I think with something like this, I mean, it probably isn't when something was like, what, let me hold off for a few more minutes.
No, there was, maybe not a few more minutes, but there were people that were holding out saying it's not going to be that bad.
Oh, really?
There was one resident there. I believe his name was Harry Truman. Seriously, his name was Harry Truman. Not the famous guy, but just some guy named Harry Truman. And he decided he was going to go down with the ship.
Oh, my God.
And there was people like that back then that just said, I'm not leaving. I remember when that happened. So I wouldn't have been there, no. I would have got the heck out. I was in Sacramento at the time. I wasn't up there. I was in California.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, living on a volcano.
That's right. Here we are in Hawaii. I know.
So
I guess I have my second chance, Dave, right?
That's right. If volcanoes were to erupt here, you'd be like, going to the beach.
I'll go to South Korea, Dave.
Yeah, there you go.
The big picture on that page with the ash falling reminds me, and the story kind of reminds me of, have you ever read the account of James Noctway on September 11th?
I don't remember the story.
I
know who the guy is, but I don't know the story.
Yeah, he's one of the most renowned war photographers of this time. And it's interesting, looking back at all the photographic coverage of 9/11, because so many of the world's best photographers lived in New York City anyway. Mm-hmm. And he's there, this guy known for covering these conflicts all over the world. And he basically, walked out of his apartment and started documenting the, ground zero as it was happening. But he was basically right there at the base of the tower while it was falling. And he's got this picture of, it's like, I think it's St. Peter's Church across, like all those the shattered, pieces of the tower collapsing behind it. And then he said he dove into an elevator with somebody that he didn't know and was basically just entombed in darkness for like hours, until they could get out of there. But, it just kind of reminded me of that, people being right there in the thick of it while it's happening. So a lot of respect for people that do that.
I don't know the name of the photographer. There was a female photographer there that day as well, and she was running toward the collapsing buildings with her camera, and everybody was yelling at her, "Hey, stupid, turn around. That's not a place to go." Yeah. And she says, "No, this is my job. I'm taking pictures here. This is my job. I'm getting documentation of this."
That's right.
And you put yourself in that situation. Would you run back? I think I would just join the crowd. I can shoot it from across the street. I don't need to be up close.
Put your long lens on.
Yeah. My life is more important than a photograph.
Yeah. So the most viewed story, I guess, of the year was about inspirational quotes, and I think you mentioned a quote that inspired you or that you remembered. Any inspirational quotes or anything? Do you have a quote, Ron? Like, what's Ron's quote? Anything?
I'll think of that. I didn't think about that. I'm not that fast on my feet this morning. Still 4 a.m. here.
Indeed. My personal quote of choice, or my motto, is anything that can be done better. It's just a general, like, hey, don't settle.
Oh, I got one for you.
Okay.
The person who says that cannot be done should not tell that to the person who is doing it. You can't do that. Well, here I am doing it.
Yeah. It's
that goes for security guards, etc. You can't take pictures here. Click, click, click. Evidently, you're wrong, sir. I just took 3.
That's right. Are you out in public? Is this a public space? I can take your photograph. Jeff, if I were to ask you, what's Jeff's quote? Is there anything Jeff would say?
Oh, man.
Quote, unquote, Jeff McWhorther.
Be present. Be present.
Be present. That's a good adage, good quote, good thing to live by. Be present, Jeff McWhorther.
In everything.
Indeed, in everything, indeed. All right, great. Well, this is going to wind up this wonderful Hawaii special episode with me and Ron, and of course Jeff. But Jeff, where can people find more about you and your work?
They could find my website, jeffreymcwhorter.com. It's JEFFREYMCWHORTER.com. My Instagram account is private because every time I open it up to public, I get all these crazy stuff on there. So if you really want to follow me, you can request, and maybe I'll add you. And that's JMcWhorter11 at JMcWhorter11.
Just follow us at Around the Lens on Instagram. All the crazies come over to Around the Lens, and you can say whatever you want.
We need more subscribers.
We're happy to have vitriol on our comments. Whatever helps increase the follower count. Okay, that's great. And Ron, anything in your world you want to tell people about?
Well, I'm going to be staying home for the next few days because Dave's got my car. So
that's right.
Maybe I'll shoot things out the window. I don't know.
And if you want to come out to Hawaii and see Ron in person, he'll be happy to take
That's
a
right,
selfie
Jeff.
with you.
Yeah, I don't know about your 5 kids, but I got one for
great.
you.
We got
He'll sign an autograph.
We're postponing our 10-year anniversary because of this 5th kid coming. So maybe next year for the 11th anniversary, you can put us up.
When do they do?
February 25th.
Oh my gosh! Congratulations.
You're allowed to bring 1 kid, so pick your favorite. All right, you come visit. You can bring 1 kid.
Oh, thank you.
Is it 5 and done, or are we going to go for?
I don't know. We'll see. Probably. We'll see.
Basketball team. Stop at the basketball team.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll stop at the fire team. Military folks will know how many people that is. But all right. Well, thank you, Jeff, so much for being. By the way, what are the ages of the kids? How old are the kids?
They're 7, 6, almost 4, and 2, and then
oh my gosh,
coming soon.
Well,
yeah.
Tell your wife, we feel for her and her sacrifices and efforts. So.
I will. She's pretty uncomfortable right now, so I will share that.
Indeed. All right, well, that's going to conclude this week's show. Thank you, Jeff, so much for taking time out to be on the program. We'll always be happy to have you back and talk about whatever you're doing and any new documentary projects you might start up or work on. So don't hesitate to come back on and let us know. For Ron Hamilton, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 206, and we are out.
Thanks for listening to Around the Lens. We hope you enjoyed the show. To continue the conversation, head on over to one of our social media outlets such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter. To support the show financially, consider donating to us via Patreon. For show notes from this week's episode and links to everything else we talked about, just go to our website, aroundthelens.com. Finally, if you or someone you know might be a good guest for the show, get in touch with us via email at info@aroundthelens.com.